Marnie Schmidt, and I'm a real believer in operational excellence and quality. My mission is to help people like you build quality systems that improve not only the quality of your products, but your customers' experience, so you'll be a believer too. In this series, I'm taking all of the requirements of ISO 9001 and breaking them into small sections and then translating and interpreting them so that you can understand the requirements a little bit easier. In today's video, we're going to talk about communication 7.4. In each video, I give you one good reason to trust me. And I'll tell you today that I am certified by the American Society for Quality in areas such as quality management, internal auditing, and metrology. So I've been at the quality game for quite a long time. Let's get into communication. This is going to be relatively short. It's a very short requirement. There's not really a whole lot to it, but because it's so important, I wanted to dedicate an entire video just to this particular subject. Communication is the key to any business running properly. It's great to have processes, we need that, we've got to have good leadership, but we really need to have a communication strategy for our business. It's as important as an actual business plan, as a way to figure out how we're going to communicate. So it is a requirement within the ISO standard, which I find really interesting, because for all good businesses, the requirements in ISO 9001 talk about things that are common denominators amongst successful businesses and best practices. So it actually has a full requirement, 7.4, just about communication. It doesn't say much, it's not that hard to understand, but it is something, I will give you some tips on how to really do the best that you can with your organization on communication. So first of all, let's just go through the requirements. Let's jump in. 7.4, communication. The organization shall determine the internal and external communications relevant to the quality management system, including 5 things. So we have to talk about both internal and external communication. About these 5 things. A, on what it will communicate. B, when to communicate. C, with whom to communicate. D, how to communicate. And E, who communicates. So in previous sections, we have talked about top management's roles and responsibilities. We've talked about when to communicate certain things. We've talked about what we're going to communicate. I think to figure out that with whom, we might go back to the beginning when we identified our interested parties. Remember, we identified both internal and external interested parties and what their requirements were. So at this point, we can sort of marry that together with this communication section. We have to decide what we're going to communicate internally and externally, with whom, when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it, and who is going to do it. So that's the top management piece, probably, is going to be the who is going to do it. What we're going to communicate about, well, it might just be things about our management system that we want to make available to internally and to the public, or to that list of interested parties. When we're going to communicate, that's up to us, how often we want to do that, how we're going to do it. There's a myriad of ways that you can communicate, obviously. Talking is one way of communicating, but you can do things like companies use newsletters. People, maybe there are dashboards, maybe there are announcements, there are bulletin boards. You might make videos, maybe there's an address that comes from the president, there might be something on your website, there might be something on your internal website that has this communication plan. And then there's meetings, there's emails, there's announcements, there's a million different ways to communicate. But this section is very, like I said, it's short and sweet, 1 sentence and 5 bullets that just says who, what, where, when, how, all of that about communication. But it's a good idea for your business to actually take a minute in your strategic planning and decide exactly how you're going to communicate and what that strategy looks like. I actually have a client that has something that we work together to write down an actual cascading workflow of exactly from the very top what is going to be communicated and how it's going to go through in what avenue. So, and it's actually a graphic that was described by the management team when they did a strategic plan, and they check up on that. They actually audit themselves to that requirement that they set for themselves. They set an expectation that somehow everything that needed to be known throughout the organization at different levels. Of course, with data, with financial information, any of those things, there might be sensitive things. And so a certain amount of information might be communicated at the very top, and then another amount of information might be communicated at the middle, and so on, all the way through the organization, to make sure that everybody is made aware of what's going on with the management system, with the business, the health of the business, where there are improvements made, where there are risks, what the results of your internal audits are finding, so that people are made aware of we're finding these kinds of things. This is what's trending. This is what we want to do for new initiatives. If you have a very formalized plan about communication, you can be more effective and you're more likely to stick to that plan. So I'll show you here. You can kind of get the idea from looking at a workflow, and however you decide to address this, just make sure that it's clear that you have a strategy that's going to make sure that everybody in your organization, completely throughout, and including those interested parties like your suppliers and your customers and regulators and neighbors and all those people, that there is some communication strategy. So that wraps up 7.4. It's pretty short and sweet and to the point. Next, we're going to dive into not the talking, but the writing things down. Documented information is next, 7.5. Until then, keep improving.